Hey friend, welcome back to Bible Tract Echoes. I'm Micah McCurry, your host. I want to ask you if you would to grab your Bibles and go to 1 Samuel chapter 4. That's 1 Samuel chapter 4. I've got one last thought for you today from our theme about don't put God in a box. Would you go there with me? 1 Samuel chapter 4. I'll give you a moment to find it for yourself. All this week, we have been in 1 Kings 19. But we're transitioning over to 1 Samuel 4 just for today because I have something I'd like to share with you that I think would be a help to you. We've been talking about this thought, don't put God in a box. Don't put God in a box. We've given some reasons from 1 Kings 19 why you shouldn't. God is individual with his interactions. Now realize if you missed any of these previous days of the broadcast, you can go back and listen to them on demand on YouTube. Just search for Bible Tracts Incorporated, or maybe you'd like to go on your favorite podcast player. Any of the previous episodes of this broadcast can be listened to on demand at any time through those avenues. But today, we're looking at the fact that you shouldn't put God in a box. He's individual with his interactions. 1 Kings 19 shares that, and he's careful with the clock. He always knows just what's around the corner. He knows what's coming up tomorrow. You don't need to worry about tomorrow. God will take care of you. He does miracles with minorities. We talked about that yesterday. He's got talent with tools. But today we're going to look at what happens. Just one last day summing up this thought. What happens when you put God in a box? You say, oh yeah, of course, you limit him, right? Well, there's a few other things that happen when you put God in a box. We're going to look at 1 Samuel chapter number 4. Verse number 2, the Bible says this, "And the Philistines put themselves in array against Israel. And when they joined battle, Israel was smitten before the Philistines, and they slew of the army in the field about 4,000 men." Now you got to realize, this is kind of a crazy situation. God's people losing this battle in such a horrendous way. What a sad thing. 4,000 families without a father, 4,000 wives without a husband. How does this happen? This seems a little unusual for the Israelites to lose like this. I mean, think back to Ai. After the Israelites had taken Jericho, they went up against Ai, this small city, and they were sin in the camp, and they didn't ask God's opinion, et cetera, et cetera. But what happens? 36 men died. Now that was bad enough, but 4,000? 4,000 men die. What would cause this? Look at 1 Samuel chapter 4, verse 3. "And when the people were come into the camp, the elders of Israel said, Wherefore?" They're asking the same question I'm asking. "Wherefore hath the Lord smitten us today before the Philistines?" But then they think they have the answer. "Let us fetch the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of Shiloh unto us, that when it cometh among us, it may save us out of the hand of our enemies." You know what these Israelites say? They literally said, "Let's go get the God box." Now, friend, what happens when you put God in a box? Well, let's keep reading and find out here. "So the people sent to Shiloh, that they might bring from thence the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, which dwelleth between the cherubims, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God." Now, Hophni and Phinehas, you may recall from 1 Samuel earlier, they were not good dudes. They were actually the opposite thereof. They were wicked young men, and they were the priests, unfortunately. But what happens when you put God in a box, as the Israelites essentially did? You just might leave him behind. When you forget the fact that God is omnipresent, that he's everywhere, and you think you can put him in a box, you, of your own free will and volition, can delegate, or relegate, I should say, God to be away from you. You can tell God, you just wait over here. I'm going to go live my life. When I need you, I'll come get you. And that's what the Israelites essentially are telling God. We aren't living in such a way to please you. Hophni and Phinehas, they are living the antithesis, the exact opposite of what pleases God. But they're thinking, well, if we go get the God box, if we get the Ark of the Covenant, everything's going to be okay. But it goes further than that. Look at verse number 5. And when the ark of the covenant of the Lord came into the camp, all Israel shouted with a great shout, so that the earth rang again. And when the Philistines heard the noise of the shout, they said, "What meaneth the noise of this great shout in the camp of the Hebrews?" And they understood that the ark of the Lord was coming to the camp. They were excited. They were shouting. They were celebrating. So much so that in verse number 7, the Philistines were afraid, for they said, "God is come into the camp." They said, "Woe unto us, for there hath not been such a thing heretofore. Woe unto us! Who shall deliver us out of the hand of these mighty gods? These are the gods that smote the Egyptians with all the plagues in the wilderness." These Philistines don't even know that God is one God. Be strong, the Philistines say, and quit yourselves like men. They kind of hype themselves up, the Philistines do. But the Israelites, they're all roused up, they're riled up, they're ready to go. Why? Because they think they've got the God box. You know what happens? You might leave him behind if you put God in a box. And you'll also have a false perception of power when you actually have the God box with you. You'll think, we've got to shout, but you'll be lacking substance. You might have sizzle, but you don't have the steak. Now, if you've listened to this program for any length of time, you may know that I enjoy food. I enjoy good food. I enjoy all kinds of food, Italian, Asian food, you name it, American food. I enjoy Mexican food, though. I enjoy fajitas. Most of the time when I go to a Mexican place, I'll get fajitas. I don't know what it is about them. They just make me happy, you know? I think part of it is you get to eat with your hands a little bit. The tortillas, you kind of making your own food, you know, that you kind of in front of yourself. I don't know what it is, but I think it definitely has something to do with the sizzle. You know what I'm talking about. You sit down in the Mexican restaurant, all of a sudden there's a shh sound, and some dear Hispanic person walks by you, and they've got a plate, an armful, maybe all the way up their arm. They've got these cast iron little skillets with fajitas. Now, I realize I'm making myself hungry right now, but you know what I'm talking about, right? And what a sad thing it is when they walk by your table, but they don't stop at your table. They're not bringing their fajitas to you. They're going to the next table over, and you just have to listen to that lovely sizzle. You got the sizzle, but you don't have the steak. Well, these Israelites, that's exactly what they had. They had a lot of sizzle. They had a lot of popularity, but they didn't have the power of God. They didn't have the presence of God. They had the shout, but they had no substance. I hope we don't live there as Christians. We think because we go to church, we sometimes we make church our God box. We live one day on Sunday, we go there with a whole lot of shout, and then we go live Monday through Saturday, live like the devil, because we're not in the God box. We're not in those four walls we call the church, and so we forget that God comes with us everywhere we go because he's omnipresent, but also if you're a Christian, he dwells within you. What happens when you put God in a box? These Israelites, they thought the Ark of the Covenant was essentially God to them. What happens to them? Well, verse 9, the Philistines, they heard the shout, but they steeled themselves for the battle, and they said, the Philistines did, "Be strong, quit yourselves like men, O ye Philistines, that ye be not servants unto the Hebrews, as they have been to you. Quit yourselves like men and fight." And the Philistines fought, verse 10 of 1 Samuel 4. And Israel was smitten. And they fled every man into his tent, and there was a very great slaughter. For there fell of Israel, get this now, 30,000 footmen. The first time they skirmished, 4,000 men died. What happens when you put God in a box? You just might, because of false confidence, because you think you have a false perception of the power, you just might lose worse than you did before. That is precisely what happens to these Israelites. They think that they've got this thing handled. They went and got the Ark of the Covenant. And what ends up happening? Verse number 11, and the Ark of God was taken, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were slain. And Verse 12 continues on. It's interesting addendum here. There ran a man of Benjamin out of the army and came to Shiloh the same day with his clothes rent and with earth upon his head. Basically, he's distraught, as many of the people are. They've lost, yes, but the Ark of the Covenant's been taken. And the people are crying about what's gone on here. And Eli, he's 98 years old. His eyes were dim that he could not see. And the man tells Eli what happens. Verse 17. The messenger answered and said, Israel is fled before the Philistines. There hath been also a great slaughter among the people. Thy 2 sons also, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead. And then he tags it with the most important news, the Ark of God is taken. And it came to pass, when he made mention of the Ark of God, that he, Eli, fell from off the seat backward. It wasn't the news that his sons were dead that killed him. He heard about the Ark of God, that he fell off the seat backward by the side of the gate, and his neck brake, and he died. Eli, this old man, it stunned him. He fell, broke his neck, and died because the Ark of God. What happens when you put God in a box? It might just be that God will actually leave you. I'm not talking about the fact that he stops being omnipresent. I just mean his presence might not be with you anymore. Verse number 19. And his daughter-in-law, 1 Samuel 4:19, his daughter-in-law, Phinehas, his wife, was with child, near to be delivered. And when she heard the tidings that the Ark of God was taken, and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed herself and travailed, for her pains came upon her. She's about to have a baby. And about the time of her death, the women that stood by her said unto her, Fear not, for thou hast borne a son. But she answered not, neither did she regard it. And she named the child Ichabod, saying, The glory is departed from Israel, because the Ark of God was taken, and because of her father-in-law and her husband. And she said, The glory is departed from Israel, for the Ark of God is taken. Friend, it's no laughing matter. Don't put God in a box. Don't put God in a box. Don't reduce him to human terms. Don't think you can control him. Don't think that he can be dissuaded or distracted by you or me. Don't put him in a box. Let's just do what he wants us to do. Let's understand that he is careful with the clock, does miracles with minorities, is individual with interactions. He's got talent with tools. Thank you so very much for listening today. My prayer, as always, is that you have a great day for his glory, and we will plan on talking to you soon. God bless.
Thank you for joining us today for Bible Tract Echoes, a ministry of Bible Tracts Incorporated. If you would like to receive a free sample booklet of all of our tracts, you can contact us by calling 309-828-6888. That's 309-828-6888. Our mailing address is P.O. Box 130, Dwight, Illinois 60420. A faster way to contact us is to go to our website at BibleTractsInc.org. That's BibleTractsInc.org. There you will find more information about our ministry and details on how you can support Bible Tracts Incorporated. Thanks for listening, and may the Lord richly bless you as you serve Him.